It turns out that adaptation is a very basic part of human nature in many ways. And one example we can think about is romantic adaptation. So imagine we organize all women according to desirability and all men according to desirability. In reality, we kind of agree about who is high and who is low. We might not agree on the details, but in general, we agree. What would happen is the high would be with the high, the middle will be with the middle, the low will be with the low. There might be some fluctuations, but in general, it agrees. And while we all can think about the example of very rich, ugly men marrying beautiful women, in principle, that's the exception. The standard is that beautiful people marry beautiful people, less beautiful people marry less beautiful people. And adaptation is basically about how you make sense of where you are. So imagine you're kind of in the middle of the scale, and you can't get to the top of the scale, right? Somebody at the top of the scale have other options. How do you make sense of where you are in this? And I have to say that for me, this was a particularly interesting kind of salient question, because I grew up with a particular belief of where I fit in the social hierarchy. I knew basically what women will date me and not date me from my group of friends. And then one day I got injured. And the next day, I couldn't think about romance for a long time, but when I basically started feeling a little bit better, I was in a very different place in the social hierarchy. And I started wondering, would the women who were willing to date me a few months or a year earlier would still be willing to date me or not? And I came to the conclusion they probably wouldn't, because I've lost something very important in my value in the single markets. And I started thinking very generally about how do we make sense of where we are? How do we adapt? What do we do? And I said, would I have to settle? Right? If I kept on my standards or my ideals about who should date me, and those people who I thought should date me would not be willing to date me, would I settle? Would I wake up every morning, look at the person next to me and say, well, that's not what I wanted, but it's the best I could do? Do all of us do that? So together with the guys who are running Hot or Not, we looked at this data. And Hot or Not is a really interesting website. You see pictures of people, and you get to say how hot they are on a scale from 0 to 10. And you rate them, and you see how other people rate them, and you get the next picture. It's like people watching plus rating, and plus you get feedback about other people. But what's so special about Hot or Not is, as a rater, as a person who gives impression to other people, you can put your picture in the set as well. So now I know people with what ratings rate who. So imagine you could have two people. One of them is rated as 4, one of them is rated as 8, and they both rate pictures of other people. So we got lots of data like this. And the first question we ask is, are people who are low on attractiveness basically view attractiveness differently than people high on attractiveness? Are 4s looking at people and saying, oh, I don't like symmetry so much. I want buck teeth. I want men with hairy back. I want, whatever it is. Because if you could say the people in the middle of this scale, how do they make sense out of it? Maybe they start saying, I don't want people at the top scale. I value chubby, short, bald, hairy back individuals, right? Whatever it is, right? So we looked at that, and the answer was no. The answer was that everybody appreciated beauty in the same way. And one of the reasons, of course, could be that we have so much information from the media that we get socialized to one value of media, but it's not the case that people who are low had a different social hierarchy in terms of beauty. They rated the 9 as 9s and 8 and 8 and 7 and 7, just like the people who are very highly attractive. So you could say maybe the people who are low on attractiveness are actually oblivious. Or maybe at least online they're oblivious. They think they're a 10, even though they're a 2, they think they're a 9. So Hot or Not has another feature, which is meet me. You can not only rate people, you can say, hey, would you meet me? Now it's not just about rating them, it's about, do you have a chance with them? What would happen? Do the people at the low end of the scale try to meet as much people at the high rate of the scale as the people at the high rate of the scale? No. They basically aimed more or less correctly, right? People know where they are in the scale. They understand they only have chance with those people, but they nevertheless appreciate the attractiveness of the people at the top of the scale. So what do? We recognize our place, but we have a different aesthetic of beauty. To understand how this adaptation process might work, we actually created speed dating events. And in these speed dating events, what we got was for people not only to choose who they want to see for a date later, but also rate them on different attributes and tell us how important these attributes are for them. And what we found was that the people on the low level of attractiveness start valuing things like sense of humor. So if you think about it, the attractive people say, I care about attractiveness. The people at the low end of the scale, they can't, right? Because if they really want attractiveness, it wouldn't work for them because the attractive people have better options. So instead, they say, I want to focus on other things. I'll focus on kindness, I'll focus on sense of humor, I'll basically change my priorities. And that's what we find is the process of adaptation in the social romantic realm, where people basically reprioritize what they find important and not important, and based on that are able to find a mate and don't feel that they've settled because they've just changed their priorities.